Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Hardborn Islamic Study Circle Seerah session 209. Inshallah, we'll probably finish with most of the stories of the delegations this week, inshallah, and then just mop up a few smaller ones next week, inshallah. But to quickly recap on last week, we did two significant delegations. One was, essentially the story of Tamim al-Dari, who talked about seeing the Dajjal, who was chained up on an island in the east somewhere. And then we also talked about there was a Yemeni prince, Wail ibn Hujr, who came to the Medina, and Prophet before he came said, "Oh, there's going to be a prince coming through that door in a few days' time," and Wail walks in, and then on the way back, the Prophet sends Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan along with him, and Muawiyah said, "Can you lend me your shoes? Can I ride on your camel?" And Wail said, basically, I'm a king, you're just a young lad, type of thing. And then many years later, Muawiyah is Khalif, and Wail is part of the delegation to see him, and Wail is reminded of that day, obviously. And then we talk about some of the other tribes he came bragging about, then becoming Muslim. And then we finished off with the story that we briefly covered before of Adi ibn Hatim, the son of the legendary Hatim al-Ta'i, who was known as the most generous of all the Arabs pre-Islam. Anyway, Adi, he fled when the Muslims took his village or his sort of town, and his sister was a POW who then negotiated her release, sought out Adi and said, "Look, what a coward you are, go and meet the Prophet ﷺ because he is a good man." And Adi arrives in the 9th year of the Hijrah, meets the Prophet ﷺ, and they have a conversation, and the Prophet ﷺ confronts Adi, who's a Christian, about his beliefs, and reassures him, and then Adi becomes a Muslim. And then sometime later, Adi says, "What about my father? Because he was really generous." And Prophet ﷺ says, "Well, your father desired something, and he got what he desired." So that's really an important message there. So moving on to some of the other delegations in this 9th year of the Prophet Hijrah, and obviously it's called al-Wufud, the year of delegations. But a lot of the chroniclers, the people who put together the Seerah, they put a lot of these delegations in this sort of chapter and sort of bound it up within the 9th year, although delegations were essentially coming sort of from the 5th and 6th year onwards through to the 11th year. The vast majority were coming in this year, the 9th year, and we saw a number of them come in the 10th year, and a few even in the 11th year. But we're just doing them all together just for the sake of completeness and brevity, probably. So the main ones to talk about today are, inshallah, the Christians of Najran and some of the Yemeni delegations as we have time. So Najran, it's a big land area. It's said to be a distance of 7 trip stages south of Makkah, going towards the Yemen. And it's got sort of 70 plus 73 villages, and it takes a fast rider 1 day to get there. And sort of militarily, they had hundreds of thousands of fighters, so it's a significant political and economic powerhouse, and obviously the Muslims need to have some formal relationship with them. Historically, the people of Najran are or were Christians, and they were allied to the Christian emperors, either Byzantium or Abyssinia. So the Prophet he over time, he's been inviting them to Islam, writing letters to the people of Najran, to their leaders, knowing full well that they have a very strong relationship with the Roman emperor. And there are some of the letters he would say, in the name of God, in the name of the God of Abraham, Ishaq, and Yaqub, and then he invites them to Islam. So seeking sort of a common dialogue or a common starting point, so they can all agree, in the name of the God of Abraham, Ishaq, and Yaqub. So there's nothing controversial there for the Najranis. And then he'd invite them to Islam, say, look, it's better, if you accept it, it's better for you. Otherwise, the three stages are: become Muslim, or if you don't want to become Muslim, if you want to stay the way you are, then agree to pay Jizya, and we will rule over you. So the political ruling and jurisdiction will be of Islam, and then you pay this tribute, this Jizya, to the Islamic State to guarantee your security. And if you don't want to become Muslim or pay the Jizya, then be prepared to fight. So they are the three stages when encountering or expanding Islam or opening new lands. So the people of Najran, obviously, they get these letters. These are official letters from the head of state in Medina, so they need to respond. So they have their conferences and they're deciding, well, how can we respond to these letters? We've been formally invited, and there's obviously there's the implicit, well, not really, explicit threat of potential war if they don't respond. So it's not something they can ignore. So they do shura amongst themselves, and one of them says, we know that a prophet is predicted from the lineage of Ismail, right? So we know that we are expecting a prophet from amongst the Arabs. So how do we know that this isn't that prophet that we know in our scripture has been predicted? And again, we've talked about how there are clear signs in the traditional Christian and Jewish Bibles or Apocrypha or other sort of letters and books that there will be a prophet. And they know these signs, and that's how we know the story of Salman al-Farsi. We did, many months ago, that there is a surety that there will be a prophet, and there are clear signs. So some of them are saying, look, this could be him. So the long and short of all these sort of all this shura consultation is that they decide to send a delegation to find out, and they say, look, even if he isn't that prophet, we should at least know his strength. So it's part reconnaissance, part intel gathering, and part genuine interfaith dialogue. So they send the largest, or one of the largest delegations that comes to Medina, and this is 60 people strong. So normally the delegations that were coming would be maybe a dozen people, tops, 4 or 5 of their chiefs, or 8 or 9, but to send a delegation of 60, it's really flexing that, look, we are important, take us seriously. So it's there to impress the Prophet and the Muslims, and also, again, it's to gain that intel, to get that reconnaissance. So should there be war, or do they take this seriously? They want to see it with their own eyes, as it were. So they arrive, this delegation arrives in the 9th year of the Hijrah, and there are 24 of the 60 are from noble families, right? So 3 out of those 24 are sort of their most senior people, their leaders of Najran. One is known as al-Aqib. He's the one who's in charge of princehood and government affairs. So he's the sort of the temporal leader. right? And his name was Abdul Masih. So he's sort of the political leader. The second of their leaders, of their tripartite leaders, his title is As-Sayyid, the Master, and his job is to look over the education and supervise the internal and external political affairs. And his name was Al-Aham, or some other narrations say his name was Sharhabil. And then the third one was the senior most religious leader, the bishop or the patriarch, as you were, who has sort of religious presidency and spiritual leadership. And his name was Abu Haritha bin Alqama. So the delegation had these three, most prominent people. So this is a really high-level delegation. And it said that when they came into Medina, they were all dressed up in their unique garments. So again, this is part of their flex. This is part of their projection of their authority and who they are. So they're dressing to impress. And the Sahabi said, look, we never saw a delegation quite like this. And they arrived at the time of Asr, and then they came and they were in the Prophet ﷺ's mosque. And then it was time for them to do their evening prayers. So they asked permission to do their evening prayer. And then from the Sahabi, said, we don't know whether it's allowed or not. So they went to the Prophet ﷺ and asked, can they perform their evening prayers? And the Prophet ﷺ says yes. And he allowed them to pray. And again, these are the Christians of Najran. They're in the Prophet ﷺ's mosque, inside the mosque, and the Prophet ﷺ, he's allowing them to undertake their ritual prayers. So they all turned, they didn't turn towards the Qibla, they didn't turn towards Al-Quds, they turned east. And they faced the wall that's sort of facing east, and they did their prayers. So again, they're not having all their sort of paraphernalia or iconography with them, but the Prophet allowed them to pray in the Prophet's mosque. So then once they've finished their prayers, and then sort of the dialogue continues, and it said that the toing and froing of the interfaith discussion happens for 2 or 3 days. So part of the time they're just sitting, observing, and then just asking questions, getting to know what Islam is all about. And more specifically, because of what are their specific theological understanding of some key questions about Isa ibn Maryam, because obviously these publicly these are people who believe that in the Trinity, and they've signed up to that. So they want to know theologically whether that is reconcilable with the Muslim faith, and they want to get it straight from the leader of the Muslims. So they start asking lots of questions about Isa ibn Maryam, his nature, his mission, and then sort of towards the end of this discussion, this toing and froing, they're saying, look, if you agree that Isa was born of a virgin birth, right? So they said, well, who is his father? So if he is, if you agree that he was born of a virgin, so who's his father? So the Prophet, he kept quiet, and he said, I don't have the specific answer to that now, because he's never had this level of theological discourse with a Christian. He says, let Allah answer you, so come back tomorrow, inshallah. So then the next day they came back, and in the meantime Allah had revealed verses of Surah Ale-Imran. So the first 60 verses, it said, were revealed during this discussion of Ale-Imran. We've talked before about the middle portion of Surah Ale-Imran, which is the third surah in the Quran, one of the longest surahs, and that was revealed after the Battle of Uhud. So we've already, dealt with some of the verses, but then you've got these verses at the beginning, talking about Christian theology, about the nature of Christ and what the Muslims, what the Christians believe. So in response, obviously the best response is the words of Allah, and Allah says in the Quran in Surah Ale-Imran verse 59 that indeed the example of Isa to Allah is like that of Adam. He created him from dust, and he said to him, be, and he was. So that is the best riposte, is basically saying, neither Adam nor Isa had a biological father. So from Allah's perspective, Allah can has power over all things. He just has to say something be, and it is. So it's no big deal for Allah. He created Adam without a father, and he created Isa alayhi salam without a father. So that was that issue dealt with. And then another question came up. Well, the Christians of Najran were arguing about the status of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So is Ibrahim a Christian, or is he a Jewish? And obviously he is the patriarch. He is the founding father, as it were, of the three great monotheistic religions, as we would say now, and saying what's taught in schools now, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, trace their heritage back to Ibrahim alayhi salam. And obviously we all revere him. And our rites of Hajj, etc., they're all linked to Ibrahim alayhi salam. So the question is, was he Christian or was he Jew? And so Allah revealed in the Quran, Ibrahim was neither Jew nor Christian, but he was one that was inclined towards the truth, a Muslim submitting to Allah, and he was not of the polytheists. So he wasn't one of those who worshipped many gods. Right? So that was that issue dealt with. And then there's a lot of toing and froing and other questions. And then after a while, the Prophet ﷺ got a sense that, despite all this polemic, they're not really making headway. And the people in Najran are entrenched in their views, which is they have every right to be entrenched. It's not something to criticize them for per se, but they're fairly entrenched in it, and there's, they're not going to come to an agreed point, because in Christian theology and Muslim theology, there are certain red lines, and there's no way we can bridge those things. And you just have to respect the other person's opinion, disagree with it, and then move on. And so the discussion over these 3 or 4 days is getting to that point. We only believe in one Allah. They believe in a very different version of God. So their Godhood is very different, the 3 in 1, etc. And then obviously the related to that is the nature of Christ, divine or human. And we obviously say prophet, and that's not negotiable. So you're not going to be able to bridge those gaps. So then the Prophet ﷺ, he presented to them the verses of Mubahala, right? And we, talked before in a different setting about Mubahala, right? And that is invoking Allah's curse upon the wrongdoers. So in a few weeks before, we talked about how if there is marital dispute and there's accusations of infidelity between husband and wife, you can swear 4 times, and on the 5th time you swear that the curse of Allah be upon you if you're lying. So this is something very, very similar. May Allah curse the party that is lying between the two of us, right? So again, this comes right at the end. This is not your starters for 10. This is not how you begin your discourse sincerely. You do your dawah, you listen, you talk, you have your cut and thrust of your discussions. But when you can see that things are entrenched, this is a way to settle the argument, or as it were, and then agree to disagree. And so with Mubahala, what you do is you call on your children, your wives, and yourself, that Allah's curse be upon my children, my wives, and my family, and me, if we are lying. So then the Prophet he presented, let's do this. So they panicked and they said, well, give us some time to think about it. So they went back, and then the next day, the Prophet he walks in, and he's holding Hassan and Hussein, and behind him is walking Fatima. This is Ahlul Bayt. This is the family of the Prophet. So he's keeping his word, and he is he's calling their bluff, essentially. So the delegation of Najran, they panic and they say, well, give us some time, let's discuss it amongst ourselves. So then they're panicking, they don't know what to do, and they say, look, shall we not supplicate? For I swear by Allah, if he really is a prophet and exchanges curses with us, we will never prosper, nor will our descendants, nor neither us nor our animals will survive it. So they know, being men of God, they know the consequences of declaring a curse upon yourself in this life and in the hereafter. So then they agree to decline the Mubahala, and they accept the Jizya unconditionally. They said, fine, we're not going to call the curse upon ourselves. We will accept your dominion over us, and we will pay you Jizya. So they accept him as having political authority over where they are, and they will agree to pay Jizya. The Prophet he wrote the agreement down, made so that was the peace treaty, as it were, and it said that they would provide 2,000 garments, 1,000 of them to be delivered in Rajab, and again, because cotton and cloth was a huge commodity, because these are people of the desert. Medina, they had they had dates. They didn't have clothes as their industry, and clothes were really well sought after. We talked a few weeks back about how people would do tawaf naked, for slightly different reasons. But again, cloth was seen as something being really prestigious. So the Prophet he asked for 2,000 garments, 1,000 to be delivered during Rajab, the other 1,000 in Safar. With every garment, they had to pay an ounce of gold, and in return, they will have the covenant of Allah and His Messenger. And He gave them a covenant that provides for them practicing their religion freely. So, in religious affairs, and this is what it is to be the al-Azdi, living under Islam, and the Prophet they then came back and said, look, because we've seen how trustworthy you are, can you send us a judge to resolve our internal affairs, because we can see how honest you are. So even amongst their own tribes and their principalities, they have conflict, and they say, well, the best arbiter would be somebody from you as independent. So the Prophet said Abu Ubaidah ibn Jurash to stand up and go with them to be their judge. And so that's the story of that delegation. Then on their way back, we talked about their leaders. The religious one of the three, Abu Harith bin al-Umer, who was their religious authority, he was walking there. He's going back in the delegation along with his brother, his younger brother. again, who's a senior member of the delegation and the party, and then he falls off his camel, and then he gives a curse to the Prophet ﷺ. Then the bishop gets really upset with his younger brother and says, "Do not curse him, because he is the prophet. He is the one that we've been waiting for." So he admits to the brother that this is the prophet. So the younger brother, who's got this hatred towards Islam and the Muslims, because they came puffed up with their pride and they're going back under the political authority of the Muslims, he says, "Well, hang on a second. Do you accept that he is a prophet?" And he says, "Yes, we know he is the one that has been predicted." So he said, "Well, why don't you follow him then?" So he can't compute this. You know he's a prophet, but you're not following him. And then so the bishop says, "Well, do you want us to give up all this wealth and all the relationships and ties we have with the emperor? Do so you're saying that all the material wealth that we have, we would put that in jeopardy if we became Muslims. So let's stay Christian, and then we can still enjoy the life that we have been." So the younger brother, he just freaked out with it, and he held his brother in high esteem, but then suddenly it just all comes crashing down. So he leaves the delegation there and then, and he heads back to Medina, and he becomes a Muslim, and he then becomes quite a high-ranking Muslim and sincere Muslim later on, and again, uses influence to try and negotiate and get other people amongst the Najranis to become Muslim. So that's the story of that. A couple of small lessons again. The importance, if you're not familiar with people from a different background, inevitably you will have prejudices and distrust. One of the best ways to get over those that feeling of distrust and prejudice, still true today, is to communicate, establish a rapport with these people, and talk to them. And then your vilification and your dehumanization of other people will, or should, if you approach it honestly, melt away. And then you may still not agree with everything, but you will have more of a respect for their views and opinions, and you'll be more tolerant of them. And the Prophet, he is tolerant of these people. He's allowing them to remain Christian and practice their beliefs. They are Ahl Kitab after all. So there can be benefit in having these summits and conferences and these dialogues, just to get to know different people better, and then use that as a platform to explain your perspective. Not necessarily in a proselytizing way, but just as it's better if you understand these things, right? So that's really important. And again, this isn't the first encounter between the Muslim community and the Christians. The Prophet, he sent the Muslims to Abyssinia. We know about that, and they had a very positive interaction with the rulers in Abyssinia, and that's where Jafar recited verses of Surah Maryam that made the Najashi cry. So again, it is important to have that dialogue, and also, argument or interfaith dialogue just for the sake of it. These debates and polemics don't always need to have this sort of it's you or us. You can agree to disagree, because sometimes you just reach a deadlock, and then all that's being generated is heated noise, and that you will lose that mutual respect, because you can become more entrenched. So again, it's just really important to know when to step back. So that's the story of the Najrani delegation. A few other little stories. There's the tribe of Muzayna. they came as a delegation. The entire tribe came, right? So, all of them, because that, they'd heard about Islam, they all wanted the blessings of embracing Islam. So the entire tribe came to publicly embrace Islam and meet the Prophet ﷺ. So on their way back, Prophet ﷺ turned to Umar bin al-Khattab and says, "Ya Umar, give them the food they need to return." It's going to take them a week or so to get back. Give them enough food and provision so that they get back. So Umar replied to the Prophet ﷺ, said, "Ya Rasulullah, I've only got a bag of dates at home." Right? Again, this is the way that they lived their life. They didn't stock their fridges full and keep their larders bursting open. They had a very frugal existence. So he's just being honest. He says, "Ya Rasulullah, I've only got a bag of dates at home." So the Prophet repeated himself, said, "Ya Umar, give them the food they need to return." So Umar got the hint. He went back, and as soon as he entered his house with the tribe there, the room that had the dates was entirely full of dates, floor to ceiling, right? So obviously this is one of those miracles of food. So the floor to ceiling full of dates. So he's giving the whole tribe enough dates for them to get back. They travel for a week or so, right? And so it said that 400 of the tribe of Muzayna, they took the dates, and then the last one of them who left, he said, "As I was leaving, I turned to look back, and the pile of dates was the same as it was at the beginning when we started to take our provisions." So again, one of the miracles of Allah. So on to some of the other tribes and the tribes related to Yemen. So there's the tribe of al-Azdi, right, which became Muslim, and one of the larger Yemeni tribes, the tribe of al-Azdi, right? It had it had some delegates come, and the Prophet ﷺ put one of the Sahabi in charge of this tribe, the tribe of al-Azdi, and his name was al-Surad ibn Abdillah al-Azdi. So he gets the title of being al-Azdi. So this Sahabi al-Surad, he goes back with the tribe, and Prophet ﷺ gave al-Surad the instructions to attack or wage war or conquer one of the neighboring tribes of one of the neighboring pagan tribes, Jurash. And they used to cause some problems towards the tribe of Al. So the Al are now Muslims, and so he's been given these instructions to conquer that neighboring tribe, or to subdue them at least. So the tribe of Al, they go back with al-Surad, and it so happened that sort of passing ships in the night, the tribe of Jurash, they sent a couple of envoys to Medina just to check out what's going on. And maybe because they'd noticed that the tribe of Al had gone, they're in a panic. So they sent some envoys to Medina to find out what is actually going on. And then, and they told these envoys that basically find out what's going on, and then sort of, if you can, see if the Prophet ﷺ would accept a truce, because obviously they've got inkling that the tribe of Al will become Muslim, and they might be in their sight. So again, they're politically aware, so they send these envoys to try and negotiate a truce if that is necessary. So these two envoys come in, and the Prophet asked. So the Prophet asked these two people, which tribe are you from? So they said, well, we're from the tribe of Jurash. And so the Prophet said, verily Allah's camel is being sacrificed at Jurash as we speak. So these two people, they just don't understand what that means. And so they're sort of looking at each other, perplexed. And so Abu Bakr and Uthman, they turn to these two people who clearly don't get it and says, woe to you, don't you realize that that he is saying that your tribe is being attacked as we speak. Your only hope to save your tribe is to ask Allah to save the tribe of Jurash, because al-Surad had been given express permission to attack their tribe. So then these two people, they're confused, but they heed the call of Uthman and Abu Bakr, who are sort of, the sort of lieutenants of the Prophet in that situation. So they said, well, can you pray to Allah to save them? And so the Prophet made a dua, and he made dua for Allah to guide the people of Jurash. So these two people, they go back to their tribe, and when they return, they find out that the same day that they had met the Prophet ﷺ, their tribe was being attacked, and their tribe was about to be overrun by a Surad when he stepped back and didn't force it through for whatever reason. So when they told the tribe of Jurash, this is what happened, we made dua, and then obviously the attack was stopped virtually contemporaneously. The whole tribe then saw that obviously as a miracle, sent a delegation back, and the whole tribe of Jurash then accepted Islam. A couple of other little stories, and then we'll sort of finish and sort of carry on next time, inshallah. So there is the tribe of Banu Tamim, which is from Najd, which is up north in the peninsula. So there's a hadith. Imran ibn Hussein says, I was sitting in the masjid, and then a delegation came from the Najd, from Banu Tamim, and they came and they started to announce their Islam. So O Prophet, we've become Muslims, So the Prophet he's obviously very happy that Banu Tamim has become Muslim. So he says, I give you the good news, Bashira, I give you good news, O people of Tamim. And so what does he mean when he says, I give you good news? What is the good news? Jannah, exactly. So when he says, I give you good news, the Prophet and most people would interpret that as, I give you good news of Jannah. You become Muslim, you've got Jannah, inshallah. Because they're Bedouins from the north, and we've talked about how some of the Bedouins are very coarse and harsh, and sort of call a spade. In their tradition, when somebody gives you good news like that, that means we're going to give you something. We're going to give you some wealth, or we're going to give you a gift. So they interpreted it in that way. So they said, you are giving us good news, so give us some money, right? And we talked before, how some of the Bedouins came to Prophet after Hunayn and demanded money. The Prophet would give it to them. So these Bedouins, they're saying, okay, fine, we'll take the good news, but give us some money now. And so the Prophet, when they wanted the money, the Prophet, he just stayed silent. He didn't say anything. He didn't, say yay or nay. He just stayed quiet and ignored them. And then another tribe, the tribe of Himyar from Yemen, down south, they came, and they also announced, Ya Rasulullah, we are becoming Muslims, And so the Prophet said to them, O people of Himyar, accept the good news, Bashra, the good news, since the people of Tamim Banu Tamim did not accept it. Right? So they said, we'll accept we'll accept the good news, and they took the good news, as it were. So they got the blessings of that, and it said they got the double blessings because theirs was unconditional. And so the other important part of this story that Imran ibn Hussein, he says, is that when these people of Yemen, the Himyaris, they came, they and sort of wanted to become Muslim, they're negotiating or they're discussing Islam with the Prophet ﷺ, and they're wanting to know some answers. So one of the things that they said is that they asked the Prophet ﷺ, there was Allah. They said, look, how did everything all begin? Right? We've accepted your good news, but can you tell us about the creation? How did Allah create everything, and how did it all begin? And again, really profound, deep questions, right? And again, you can tell these are cultured people, these are intellectual people, these are people that have come with an agenda. They've come wanting to know answers, and there's that desire, that thirst, that quest for truth and knowledge, which isn't always there. And as a teacher, when you find somebody who is inquisitive and genuinely wants to understand and to learn things to better themselves, as a teacher, you engage with that, really well. And you can easily tell those that are engaged and those that are disengaged or just going through the motions. So you got the tribe of Banu Tamim. They're just going through the motions. Yeah, we're going to become Muslim. Everyone else is doing it, and they're just taking it like that. Whereas you've got the tribe of Himyar, which they want to know, and they want to have a deeper understanding, of some really core philosophical questions. So the Prophet, he's in the mosque, and so he's telling them that at the beginning there was Allah, and there was nothing before him. Then he created the heavens and then the earth, while his throne was on water. So he's explaining the beginning of creation. And then the narrator of the hadith, Imran ibn Hussein, he says that as he's sitting there listening to that, glued, because these types of questions only these sort of foreign delegates or foreigners, when they come, they ask these questions, and the local peoples, they don't have the audacity to ask these questions. So when you're only seeing the process and once, when you're only coming and having solitary interactions, you want to know everything. And so the audience is really keen to know these questions, but they don't dare ask themselves. So he's sort of glued on the edge of his mat, as it were, listening to the answers. If there was Allah and nothing before him, and then he created the heavens and the earth while his throne was on water, and then he hears a voice from the door, and he says, as I was sitting there, someone yelled out, "Oh, Imran, your camel has fled." So he says, I rushed up and I saw my camel running away. So he chased after his camel, and he says, neither did I get my camel, nor did I catch the end of the hadith. How I wish I let the camel go and finish the hadith. So he's got these questions going back in the back of his mind. What happened? What happened? Right? But he didn't have the courage to then go himself to Prophet and ask him what happened then, right? And again, and obviously the people of Himyar, they went back, they got their answers, but they didn't narrate to other people, and neither did the other people in the audience narrate what was said. So we don't actually know the rest of the hadith around the beginning of creation. And again, that is Allah's will and Allah's blessing upon us. Quick couple of other things then. Al-Surad delegation came after the Prophet went to Al-Jirana in the 8th year of Hijrah. So this is rewinding back a bit. And he'd already sent a mission, dispatched 400 men, and we talked about this, to go to the al-Surad, which is a freshwater fountain in the Yemen. Whilst the mission, the Saraya was camped to attack, the head of the canal, the people of that village, they panicked, and they sent Ziyad bin al-Harith al-Sudda as a delegate to the Prophet ﷺ to offset the attack. And he said, I've come to you as a deputy of my people. Tell your army to go back, and I guarantee my people. So then the Prophet ﷺ, he sent the army back from the canal, and then Al-Surad, he went back, and then he because of the interaction with the Prophet ﷺ, he urged his people to come and meet the Prophet ﷺ, and then eventually 15 of them came as a delegation, and they all went back and all became Muslim. And it said that that delegation then, there's about 100 of them then joined the Prophet ﷺ in a few months in Hajjatul Wada as part of that Yemeni delegation. Prophet ﷺ would also be sending letters to the Yemeni kings. So it said that a message came to him from the kings of Himyar. We talked about Al-Harith bin Abdul Khalil, Naim bin Abdul Khalil, and Al-Naman bin Aqil, Dirain, Hamdan, and Muadh. So these are some of the kings of the Yemen, the princely states, as it were, sending messages, and this was sent through Malik bin Murrah al-Rahawi as the envoy. So they informed the Prophet ﷺ that they have embraced Islam and they are leaving polytheism. And again, you can see that the tide is turning, and the people of Yemen and all over are becoming Muslims. So the Prophet ﷺ, he gave them the pledge, protection from Allah and His Messenger, and provided they pay the Jizya, which was still overdue. And then he sent some companions under the command of Muadh ibn Jabal to sort of be the judge over them. And we'll talk about very famous hadith of Muadh ibn Jabal being sent to Yemen. We'll talk about that probably next time, inshallah, because there's a lot of learning from that, where the Prophet he's walking along. Muadh, he sat on the camel. The Prophet he's walking along with Muadh and said, look, you might not see me again. Maybe next time you come, I won't be around. So inshallah, we'll talk about that next time, and we'll talk about some other stories of some of the other tribes, and then we'll finish off some of the other delegations, and then inshallah we'll be on to the last few stories of the Prophet. So we'll be getting on to Hajjatul Wada, the farewell pilgrimage, and then shortly after that we'll be doing obviously the demise of the Prophet. In the meantime, we'll catch up on a couple of other things that happened. Some of the birth and death of Ibrahim, which we briefly mentioned, but we'll talk more about that story as well. Maria, the Copt, and some of the other stories of discord between the Prophet and his wives, which we briefly mentioned, but we might do those in more detail just to round things off before we finish, inshallah. So we'll just finish there, inshallah. And so do remember the Ummah and us in your du'as. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Walas inna al-insan wa fi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawassaw bil haqqi wa tawassaw bis sabr. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.